Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Conversations at the Summit. It's the podcast we've been doing in the build-up to Climb, and we have made it to Climb25. We are live on the summit stage here at Climb25. We've got some fantastic guests for you to rattle through in the next 45 minutes, but please welcome my trusty sidekick, the man behind Climb, Gordon Bateman.
Where do you want me to sit? There?
Have a seat. Come and sit next to me so I can keep hold of you for a change. As we record this, it's 1 o'clock on day one. How are you? You've made it.
Yeah, good, I think. It's the atmosphere is incredible. It's just electric. You know, I've been in here for most of the morning, but I'm just loving it. It's absolutely good.
And one day you will get some sleep, but not until the other side of Climb. Well, we've got some fantastic guests. Let's bring them up. First up, 2 for the price of 1. We'll let them explain. We've got Giles Moore from Equity and Ben Davies from Praetura Ventures.
Do you feel like you're kind of a catwalk, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I like it.
So Giles, Ben, 2 has become 1. Explain.
Yeah, so we announced the news about a couple of weeks ago now, subject to FCA approval, I have to say that. Praetura and Equity are merging to create PXN Group, which should be official a couple of months' time, something like that, probably.
Yeah. So the idea was we were 2 northern investors that kind of started with the same mission. The mission was the opportunity gap in this part of the world. You know, 80% of VCs are based in London, 3% are based in the north of England. We have both done the hard yards in terms of trying to bring capital into this part of the world. And to be honest, some of our founders met and they kind of realized that it was a really good fit. And I think that this provides us scale, and obviously scale to do more in this part of the world. So whether that's supporting founders, bringing more capital here, but specifically, you know, we've now got patches across the northwest of England, Scotland. We both wanted Yorkshire. You guys got there first, but now we've got these 3 cities as well as a London office as well, which hopefully means we can crack on and do more for this part of the world, basically.
Yep. So why do you think it will work, and what difference do you think people will see between you coming together?
Well, I think the one thing people I think have noticed quite a lot is both Par and Praetura being really focused on helping the ecosystem. That's a big key part. What they guys have done in Northwest, what we've done in Yorkshire to really help that, what Par have done in Scotland over the years as well. I think it's quite transformational. There's a hell of a lot more we can do, and I think actually now working together, we can do things bigger, faster. Whereas before, you know, you had to think a little bit more what you had to do, should be a bit more strategic. I think now, although we still want to be strategic, I think we can just do bigger, bolder kind of activities. And I think for a lot of for a lot of founders, I mean, we're opening up a lot more funds really. You know, we have our funds that we have. Praetura have got their funds they have. They complement each other really well. There's no direct rivalry at all. So what's really nice about it is, you know, we're now, if you look at the kind of journey, we can now go from 250,000 up to 8 million, which is a huge kind of range of investment side. And that's really encouraging for a lot of the startups here. So we can get in from pre-seed and we can go up to Series A and touch into Series B as well. So the one thing that people will say is actually, how do you keep companies staying here and they have to move for investment? Well, we're hoping this is the first step that we can invest in these companies all the way through their journey. And hopefully now we've got the scale, we can bring more funds in and be able to then compete in the Series B, Series C category as well, which is what we're hoping to do.
I think that's critical though, isn't it? Because you see locally, historically, founders might be able to get that very early stage, and then they just hit a glass ceiling because there isn't that continuity. And I know what's quite exciting from my perspective of you 2 organisations coming together is that commonality of commitment to supporting the businesses. So I think things that I think is an exciting opportunity now for a founder is you can almost come off that hamster wheel of chasing money. You know, you make the decision here, you're not going to invest in something that you don't believe you're going to invest in along here. I mean, yeah, things change, but that for a founder is going to make their life a lot easier.
Absolutely. And that's always one of our, I mean, we've always kind of seen that as something, but we've always, as you rightly said, we've always come to a blockade where we've not been able to invest. So we have to find external investors to come in, and sometimes that sadly means they have to move. to different parts, whether that's into Europe or the US. And we're hoping this now, the new PXN group, will be able to keep the companies here, invest on their journey, keep the most exceptional businesses, first of their kind, IP rich. We're amazing at innovation R&D, and the North has so much potential, and we're really excited. We think this is a great opportunity to change the landscape up here, and we're all very passionate about the North.
And Ben, it is something that Climb is absolutely passionate. It is about investing in the North. This northern powerhouse phrase has been bandied around for years, but do you get the sense that in the last few months there is a genuine move towards that and a building of the North?
Well, I think I talk about the Northern Powerhouse so much, I'm almost close to getting a tattoo now, to be perfectly honest. We obviously manage the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund too for the British Business Bank. I genuinely don't think that I'd want, and I would say this obviously, there's a better place to scale a business in the UK at the moment other than this part of the world, partially because you're sort of big enough to be globally ambitious but small enough where people still root for you, and I think that sense of community, which is personified here at Climb, is something that's very precious, and actually people are super helpful to, there is an ecosystem here that wants you to do well, and I think that some of the really early stage founders that we work with on things like our pre-seed sort of cohort investment program are always amazed at how many people want to help them get to that next stage. So I think from our point of view, undeniably, you can't get away from the fact that we went through an equity boom and now a bit of a lull in funding. Like take Manchester, for example, which was held up as sort of a city that was breaking out in terms of its funding capabilities, raised 532 million quid in the peak of that boom in 22. But it actually then saw the biggest crash in total deal numbers of any city in the UK after that. And I think that's because, it was swiping for cities like Warsaw, Lisbon, Rome. It was doing better than they were. And that kind of bump obviously hurt initially. But now we're starting to see people really rebuild. Other breakout success stories happen in places like Leeds and Liverpool, and I think that you can feel that and obviously in Edinburgh, that you can feel this kind of groundswell where actually with a really progressive public sector, some really decent unis, some really interesting talent, you're starting to see that momentum build back up again, and I think that everyone had that bump. It's just about aiming just a little bit higher again, which I think you're now seeing.
Do you think there's a benefit now? Because we're seeing that, we are seeing a lot more activity. We've seen this when we were people today, investors, yesterday in Investor Day, the energy in that room. I think there's a lot more optimism of, we've gone through that bump and now we're starting to build. Connecting your two organisations, say your Northern Powerhouse in Manchester or the Northwest, and then PAR has got funds over here, having that continuity across the whole of the North. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's also, absolutely. And I think it's also having the people on the ground who know. I think that's a really key thing. I agree. Yesterday was a great example of a real buzz amongst a load of investors from all over the place, from London as well, who felt a real buzz about being up here, really intrigued about what we were doing. But I think it's really important, you've got people on the ground who know and live and breathe these regions, understand what people are going through, can be there to support. Because it's not about finding a deal and just getting there that time. It's about building those relationships with a lot of our founders. And a lot of time that's starting before it's even an investment that we see as a perfect proposition. And, the big part of it is actually, us going over to Manchester, those guys coming over here, and spreading that expertise, that experience, learning from what these guys have done amazingly well in the Northwest, them learning from what we've done really well in Yorkshire and Scotland, and I think that does add to a lot. I think it adds a lot of benefits to it.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, we've been at this for a fair few months now, and it's amazing how easier fit the two businesses have been with the things that you guys have done with like Kids Up Accelerator, some of the other things that we've done with more sort of AI and SaaS in the Northwest. And I think from our point of view, we've now got 115 portfolio companies employing 3,100 people. That's a much larger data set to pull from, where you can share expertise, you can distribute talent between them. We're going to be looking at our operational partner program and trying to encourage more people to get on that and actually get the best people into the best companies so we can try and accelerate that. And I think that, I think it's incredibly exciting from our point of view.
Just before I end and let you go, when you merge like this, is it a bit like a marriage? Do you sign a prenup?
It's more like a first marriage. So we both love each other right now. No, I'm joking.
So it was love at first
merger of
sight.
equals 50-50. He gets the house if it doesn't work.
Just don't get a dog.
I'm taking that. I'm writing that down.
Don't get a pet, because then it gets really
Who
complicated.
gets the kids?
This is all going
He's
off.
more
I know.
caring.
It's my fault I took us down this road. But we wish you the very best of luck with it. Giles and Ben, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
See you soon.
It really is exciting times, isn't it, to see this kind of merger in the north of England.
100%. I think this continuity, I think for founders is a real challenge that, and particularly if you're in the middle, if you're in Huddersfield, do I go to Mercia, do I go to Praetura, where does that work, whatever. Now just think, there's a fund that's got money that can support my business and is connected. One of the things that we talked about yesterday is connected into other funds. We're going to, on this podcast, talk to other funds, national funds. That interconnection between specialist dedicated funds that are national with the guys on the ground here, I think is absolutely critical.
What key to Climb is variety, and we're going to bring up somebody completely different now. Now, what this man does not know about sports broadcasting, quite frankly, is not worth knowing. He describes himself as a sports watcher, which I think is somewhat underplaying it. Please give a big hand to Peter Hutton.
Hi, Peter.
Peter, welcome home. You're back in Leeds, Leeds lad. It's where it all started for you.
It is, starting in local radio as a 16-year-old, and certainly wouldn't have expected to end up where I ended up.
Which is around the world. What took you from a rookie sports broadcaster on local radio here in Leeds, to behind the scenes on the production side of it, and then around the world?
I think I should start off with a lot of luck on that journey. The key move for me, in many ways, was I went from radio, worked at Look North, had a year at Look North, and saw this advert in the paper that said satellite TV is opening up in the UK. We need sports broadcasters. So applied totally on spec, job advert in The Guardian, and a guy called Vic Wakeling hired me and ended up running Sky and basically dragged me with him for like 3 or 4 years after that. So that was the first really big change. And then, with the typical arrogance of a guy in his 20s who thinks he's made the big time, I said yes to a whole series of different opportunities. The number one story out of that was in '94, I got a call that said, do you want to go and produce cricket in India? And are you comfortable with India? Do you know the market? And I said, yes, of course. I'd literally only been to an Indian restaurant. And ended up living in India for what was going to be 6 months, turned into 8 years. And that took me from being a broadcaster and a journalist into being someone who ran an office of 100-odd people, turning over $100 million within 2 years. So a huge career change. But I think essentially it came out of being prepared to think I can do anything, I can have a try. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong, but let's have a go.
And ended up at Sachin Tendulkar's wedding?
Yeah, that was one of the bizarre things in the first few months that I ended up at. The most bizarre story of that period was that I went there to produce cricket, and obviously I arrive in India, there's no football on TV at all. And I'm really frustrated, football fan, how do I get to see anything? So I end up sort of basically talking myself into the office of the guy who's the Indian football president and saying, you should have a national league, first ever national league in India, you should put it on satellite TV, it will be great. And he basically got rid of me and he said, look, if you can find the money to do it, we'll do it. And it was like, he presumes he's never going to see me again. 3 months later, I go back with the money. We start the first national soccer league in India. And all of a sudden, I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm a deal maker. And that one deal sort of really set things going and accelerated things. It all collapsed 2 years later. But it was a brilliant story for about 6 months, and that really helped.
Where did when did you start? Someone says, go and get the money and do it. Where did you start? Did you know where you were going to get it from at that point?
Not at all. But I had the advantage of I was part of a giant conglomerate called IMG. I rang up people who didn't know who I was, said, look, I've got a big idea, how would you do it? And managed to get enough people to give me time of day that we found a way. I ended up in an office in Hong Kong with a guy from Rupert Murdoch's organization who hugely impressed me because he had a fridge with beer in it, which at the time I thought was, wow, this guy has got an amazing life. And managed to sell it and sold the idea and sort of suddenly realized that having the skills as a journalist and a broadcaster is not so different from having the skills of a salesman. You know, you've got to talk when you really don't know what you're talking about. You've got to try and build a rapport. You've got to sort of build those soft skills. And that allowed me to sort of set off on a business career that seemed to work.
We're going to have to skip a few years because if we did your entire career, we'd be here all day. Silicon Valley, you ended up in Silicon Valley. How did that come about and what were you there to do?
So for 30 years, basically, I rode the growth of pay TV, you know, and I could always claim I was really good, but basically the tide was in the right direction. More and more people were subscribing to sport on TV. The budgets kept getting bigger. I kept getting better jobs. And then towards the end of that period, you realized actually consumption is changing and that pay TV is going to hit the rocks at some point. And I was in a meeting at Discovery when I was CEO of Eurosport, where they said, basically, you guys on the left, you keep making the money for us and we'll invest it all with you guys on the right that are the digital people. And I'm like, I don't want to be on this side of the room. I want to be on that side of the room. So I decided to sort of really reinvent myself and walked away from running, you know, nearly 2,000 people at Eurosport to being the manager of one person at Meta and joining Facebook, and ended up being sent on a training course with the head chef, number 2 at Meta, because he had one person reporting to him as well. So really started again at a different level. But I did it because I thought that I don't want to be a dinosaur. I want to see the way that media consumption is changing. So went and joined Facebook, ran sport there for 5 or 6 years. And that has been brilliant in terms of understanding the way that the big tech giants think and trying to take that and put it into my own world.
There's a huge tech sector here in Leeds and in the north, as we've been talking about. What can people do from the lessons that you've learned in Silicon Valley? You know, if there's a young tech person in the audience listening to this, what advice would you give them about getting into that world?
I think the first thing is a philosophy, which is A, be prepared to fail, test and learn, and if it doesn't work, start again, go again. You know, one of the great stories about investors in the Silicon Valley is they invest in people as much as they do ideas. And if the idea fails, then they'll often keep their money with the people and let that person come up with a second idea and a third idea until it works. And the second thing I'd say, apart from that idea of where you would invest, is look at the data. You know, try and make things dependent on your results as opposed to your instincts, because your instincts can take you in the way that the industry was, not in the way the industry is going to be. So thinking forward, looking at the data, learning from the data, and being prepared to change your idea if the data tells you a different story.
Peter, was that always your philosophy though? Like, be prepared to fail, think about because that is, we've talked about this a lot, we've got sessions this afternoon, and exactly this subject is the American way. I mean, the reason why we are talking is because of a young guy from here that went to the States. It's not normal how we think here. Investors do think product or market or whatever. Did you have to adjust your style to get used to that, or were you always that, do you think?
I think, you know, the guy you use as the example, Angus Young from Netsu, you know, great example, young guy from Leeds, looking at how do I build bigger? And he went to Silicon Valley to try and raise money. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'd say that's a brilliant philosophy because people there are willing to take a risk and lose. If the person's right, if the pitch is good. And I think for me, I was really lucky in that I had success quite early on, particularly in Dubai. We had a startup company that we sold for 100 million after a 2 million startup capital. And that sort of changed my philosophy to business in that I had enough confidence to say, okay, if an idea goes wrong, I'll find something else. I'll do something else. But let's have a try. Let's have a go for this. And I think, you know, there's lots of people who've stayed in Leeds and, you know, my contemporaries from that period have had a great career. But I would say maybe didn't gamble and have had a career that has had some sort of glass ceiling. You talked about a glass ceiling before. Mm-hmm. And I think one of those key challenges is how do you break through? How do you become a decision maker rather than a decision receiver? Yep. And I think that as a philosophy is really important.
And it is a mindset, isn't it? Is that the thing I was impressed with Angus? It's interesting. Richard Harpin was talking earlier about just do it, you know, just get on with it. And that was the thing. 1 in 1,000 people, I say, ask for help, not for money. Go out and get it done. Angus is 1 in 1,000. that's the thing.
And be prepared to ask for people's opinion, right? You can go and ask people what they think, what their opinion is of the world, and often they'll be generous with their time and opinion, and you can learn from that. Yeah. Whereas I think, it's very easy to sort of sit in your box and go, he wouldn't talk to me, but actually, most of the people that are successful are pretty generous with their time because they've got time, because they've got money, and they're willing to sort of spread the knowledge. And it panders to people's ego to say, what's your opinion? How can I learn from you? So why not use that?
100%.
This one's a really nasty one to ask you as a last question in about 30 seconds. You talked about sports broadcasting. It strikes me as the one thing that, we all want to watch it when it's happening. You want to watch it live. Where does it sit in the landscape with the future of media and where it's all going?
I think it's a really interesting question and a massively long answer. But one of the things that hit me at Facebook in like the first week I went there is we got given a comparison of sports content against cat videos. And cat videos is a much better business because you don't have to pay for them. They're slightly less emotional.
I like them.
And the content is timeless. Whereas sport is about an immediate, passionate moment that people will pay for. And as you fracture consumption into content that is immediate and content that's long-term, sport doesn't necessarily sit in that in the same way that it does in that immediate decision-making of pay television and what does it take you to buy a subscription. So that world is changing hugely. It's a longer conversation, but again, it goes back to that point of let's look at the new data, let's refresh the way we're thinking about this and not presume that because someone paid $10 for this 2 weeks ago, they're going to pay $11 in 6 weeks' time. It doesn't work like that. You've got to see the trend and you've got to be prepared to dig into the data.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most successful sports watchers, I'd hazard. Not many people make quite as much money out of just watching sport as you have. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Hutton.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
It's a really important message, though, isn't that? A, say yes to things, but B, be prepared to fail.
Absolutely. And also ask for help. This number of people who just will ring someone like a Peter and say, will you invest in my business? Where the right answer is, can I just have some help? We've heard that in 4 sessions, I think, today, where people have said, really successful people will dedicate their time,
Well, next up, a guest from one of Climb's official partners. Please give a big welcome to Barry Downs, managing partner at Short Valley Ventures.
We're making Barry do a nice long walk.
I know, he's got a big step. He can make it up there.
Good job.
Barry, welcome. Just give us an idea of what Shore Valley's focus is when it comes to investments.
Sure. We're a venture capital firm that invests in AI technologies across the UK and Ireland. And we kind of invest quite early, so we'll do everything from pre-seed, one of the earliest checks going in, to seed, and then we'll follow on at later rounds as the company scales up. And we also, in the AI space, we invest in both applications of AI, agents, and infrastructure for AI as well.
Agents, you've taken me there immediately. When we were chatting beforehand, AI agents, I'm thinking of James Bond or something like that.
Yes.
What is an AI agent?
Well, different people have different definitions. I'll give you my definition for it. So if you're using things like ChatGPT at the moment, you're being very proactive and you're putting in a query and you're getting kind of raw intelligence out that's answering questions for you. Agents kind of sit on top of that, and they're autonomous pieces of software that can, one way of thinking about it is execute processes, make decisions, use tools such as web searches or systems to complete bodies of work. So one way to think about it is agents are kind of like the next wave of AI, and they help with automation of work. So if you're looking at some of the stuff at the moment about, I'll give you an example. So we have a company we've invested in called Momentum, and they're using agents to automate a lot of customer service, so that when you come to a website or make a phone call to a company, it's an agent on the other end of the line or at the other end of the WhatsApp that's taking your query, processing that query, and actually giving you a response. And Momentum is really interesting because the founder had a chain of aesthetic clinics, and he was actually finding it's quite a complex problem because somebody rings up, they want a certain treatment in a certain location with a certain practitioner, And it can be kind of hard to organize all of that. And then there's pre-care and then there's post-care. And he was spending quite a lot on outsourced call centers. And he found a great tech founder and asked him to build a system that would kind of automate all that and actually provide better support and better booking for customers and better aftercare as well. So they now use a suite of agents, and they call the bank of agents Layla. So if you're now going to that website to book something, Layla will answer for you. Layla will WhatsApp you. Layla, if you need to change your appointment, you can actually ring Layla, and Layla will change that for you as well. So really, if you think about it, it's this kind of next wave of AI, which is automating a lot of traditional work.
And people are using agents for software development as well, aren't they?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So some of the early places we've seen them would be software development. And there's a couple of companies that have really taken off in this space. One's called Cursor, and the other is called Windsurf, which OpenAI are just acquiring. And then there's another one called Lovable. And Lovable is a great example. That's a Scandinavian company. And you basically go into a prompt and you say, can you please build me a website that looks like Instagram? And you put that prompt in, and the agent will auto-generate the code. And then you can compile that code and launch the service. So with agents in software, we're moving from a point where everybody, if you want to build a software system or a website, you need to have some coding skills. Now you can actually chat with these agent systems, and it'll build it for you. And I think one of the really interesting things about this is it's going to open up software entrepreneurship to a wide array of people who've not been able to do that in the past. And I think that's really super interesting in terms of how it's developing.
But how's that going to affect things like valuations? Because is there going to be an oversupply of software then, do you think? Or
well, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, AI is in a bit of a boom at the moment. Valuations for Cursor have gone through the roof, and for Lovable. But the flip side of that is we're actually starting to see valuations for traditional enterprise SaaS companies come down a little bit, because organizations and individuals can use these new tools to rapidly create enterprise SaaS tools. So I think right now AI companies are getting a real premium, and that's at the kind of at the loss of enterprise SaaS. But I think it's an expanding pie. I don't think about it as it'll evolve, it'll change, but many more people will come into the market, many more systems will be created. And I think there's almost a boundless demand for software. And I think these new tools will start to fulfill them. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, just the way you're talking, it is such a fast-moving industry, AI. As somebody who's investing in it, how do you pick the next best thing? Because almost as soon as you've looked at it, it feels like it's moved on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we're a team of founders. So we've all created software companies ourselves. Very strong technical capability in the team. Also, we have a CTO that evaluates all the companies. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at a business, we are looking to see, is there a problem that the business is solving for a customer? Do they have some differentiation with their tech? Can the company scale up in international markets? Those are key things that we're looking for in any software company, and you'd look for those in Investor Ladder as well, for example. They're still important in AI. I think what is changing with AI is you can build big software companies with less people, because the software engineers are becoming far more productive with these tools like Cursor. And also, there's a lot more software being created as well. So for us, when we look at a company, we'll look at and actually, your previous speaker talking about the team. We'll always look at the team, and we look to back great founders. And one of the things, and we invest broadly across the UK and Ireland. And one of the things I can say is there's fantastic founders here in the north of England, fantastic founders in London, fantastic founders in Dublin as well. And so we're looking to back those great founders that have a vision of how they can solve a problem in the real world, or how they can transform the economy in some way as well. Because ultimately, as a venture capital firm, we are looking for companies that can scale up. And I think UK and Ireland are a really great place to find those companies that can scale in international markets.
And you're a dedicated specialist fund on AI, like you said at the beginning. What's the benefit to a founder of working with a fund like yours that is dedicated to a sector as opposed to a generic fund that's involved in multiple things, do you think?
Well, network, first of all. So if you look at our portfolio, it's full of AI companies and AI founders, and we'll never invest in competing companies. So at the most basic level, we bring our founders together on a regular basis, and our founders help each other. So there's support from our close network. There's actually the network we've built as a firm as well, and that network goes far beyond the UK and Ireland. We spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. We've got a great network there. I'll give you an example of that. So we just invested in a Dublin-based company called Mirror Security, and they're kind of like the holy grail of security for AI foundation models and for databases as well. And effectively, their area is homomorphic encryption. I won't go into the detail of that, but effectively...
You blow my mind already with AI agents. I'm not sure we can go there.
Yeah, so homomorphic encryption allows you to operate on these models and databases without decrypting the data. The challenge to date is it's been quite slow to do that. So you sacrifice speed. So this team came out of, the team completed PhDs in this area, came out into Mirror Security, started a company. We've invested, and we were able to match them with one of our advisors in Silicon Valley, who used to be the COO of RSA, which is a kind of giant security company in Silicon Valley. And we had them over there at the RSA conference, getting introduced around. And actually that company is really in a very short period of time has scaled pretty dramatically as a result of that. So having that network that can help companies scale up, particularly in Silicon Valley, particularly in the US. And then also we're looking at AI companies all day long. And so it's very easy for us to, as a result of that, to be able to drill deep quite quickly and identify, opportunities and basis of differentiation. And because we're single focused, it really gives us a lot of opportunity to help companies as well, because we have a high value add model in terms of helping companies go to market, but also with their tech as well, in terms of helping them with product development, technical architecture, and then scaling the company outside the UK as well.
Very fascinating listening to you. Thank you for explaining AI agents in a language that even I could understand, which it takes some doing. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry
Thank you very much. Thank you. Cheers.
It is such a fast-moving world, AI, isn't it? It's sort of mind-blowing in so many ways.
I think that's one of the challenges for businesses. We've got a lot of sessions today as well, isn't it, of how do I put AI in my business? Because it is moving so fast. If you're not a tech business, I think, where can AI work in an events company, or where can it work in whatever? How do you do that if you don't really understand it, which is why having a community is important.
Well, to our final guest, who is very much a man who's at the cutting edge of quite a few things, to be quite frank. He's working on eBay's Web3 strategy. Please welcome Andy Gray. Andy, I will get to what Web3 strategy is in a minute, because that's another of my stupid questions of what the heck is it. But you were a small Manchester team that suddenly gets taken over, becomes part of eBay. What process was that like for you?
Well, it was quite an interesting journey, to be honest, because we were in the tech incubator in Manchester, and I was a software engineer by trade and got really into blockchain and crypto, which was big before AI. It'll be back, don't worry. And we were just passionate about building stuff in that space, and ended up building an NFT marketplace. And then as NFTs got popular in 2021, we started getting calls from big organizations, and weirdly, eBay called up and were interested in what we're doing, which is strange because we were very small, we'd raised a small amount of money, we're just in a very niche part of the world. But once that started to get a lot of attention and people became interested in the tech, I think some of the bigger players then realized that they've got a slight deficit in the knowledge, and they want to know what's going on. And then some of them conversations often start out, exploratory and then lead to other things. And I think they thought that we knew a little bit about the space, and then eventually led on to an acquisition.
I think that's a bit of an understatement. You knew a little bit about. I met Andy on that incubator and said, Andy said, I'm a blockchain consultant. And me, I just went, when do I ring you and say, can I have some blockchain? Andy looked at me like I was an idiot and he goes, come back in a month and I'll show you. And then was able to explain it in a way which, for me, not knowing this, I think that was, and then when over that couple of years, you genuinely knew that stuff inside out.
The thing for me is like, I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur or a founder. I just wanted to be someone who played with this tech that they were really interested in. And NFTs particularly struck a chord for me at that time. And we were able to build technology and build a community and run events and then raise funds. And people
we are a
paid us
no
to do
jargon
it.
podcast, so I was going to pull you up the first time, but NFT
stands for non-fungible token. It's probably one of the worst names ever for a piece of tech. But this is really like a digital asset that you can trade and move around using blockchain technology. And they became very big because you could attach like pieces of art or pictures of different things and trade them quite freely. So for a while, everyone thought this could be a real new technology that could be used for lots of things like sports ticketing, house deeds, and I still think it will be, and people are still pushing on with that. But it just became a new novel way to trade individual unique things. And the opposite really of a non-fungible token is a fungible token, which is something you'd think about like Bitcoin or money in your pocket where there's many of them and you can exchange them easily. So both of them concepts still exist, and now we talk a lot more about AI and crypto, and all this is starting to merge in together, and there's a lot of reasons crypto and AI are going to be best buddies, I think, going forward in the future.
So what has it been like for you to suddenly find yourself as part of eBay?
Well, it's fun. You have to change from running a small company to being part of a huge company. But the reason companies like eBay buy other companies is because they're interested in what you do. So it was a real journey for me because I got to go to San Jose, meet all the executive leadership team, tell them what I thought. They told me it'd never happen in eBay. So we sort of went back and forwards. And then we eventually really found our place within the company because some of the stuff we were doing at a small level would never reap the rewards at a global marketplace level. They'd do, billions and billions of dollars of revenue. So really we had to find what makes a difference for eBay. And eBay is really a company about trust. It's a pre-loved marketplace. People sell, there's 1 billion items listed at any moment, and people sell everything around the world, truly global. And for us, the trust authenticity piece really linked in with the blockchain, and Web3 is sort of an amalgamation of like using blockchain technology with...
So what is Web3?
Well, that's a tricky question, really. I think Web3 became a generic term to sort of summarize what people are trying to achieve in innovation and with cryptocurrency and blockchain and other frontier technologies. So people felt a lot more comfortable calling it Web3. Because when people were talking about, everyone was bored of talking about crypto and people like telling about Bitcoins and stuff. So for us, Web3 became the sort of innovation with blockchain sort of team, really. And blockchain is sort of the ledgers that can sit underneath and a different way of architecting how you move data and essentially move value around. And what really struck a chord with eBay is that the value they move around is physical goods. And what they really want to do is, how do you trust people in this value chain? And what technology could help us with that. And really what we've been focused on is thinking like, how can we build technology that enables us to move things around? And when you get something in the post that it's authentic, it's real, you can trust it's come from somebody who believes sent the item as described. So we're working a lot on that sort of stuff. And the thing that comes in hand with this is a concept called digital product passports. So digital product passports are really a concept now where if you buy, and it's the people who are leading out in this space are luxury goods items. So if you buy, for example, a luxury watch or a luxury handbag or a luxury pair of shoes, luxury anything, jewelry, often now they'll come with an app and you can register that you've got the item and you can maybe get an extended warranty or some sort of value for registering with the app. But what essentially is happening under the scenes is almost like a passport going with this physical item, a little bit like you'd have a passport in the real world. And what we really want to do is say, when this high value item moves around, this passport should go with it. And the passport can help you prove who's owned it, prove which manufacturer it's come from. You might be able to go back up the supply chain, see where all the individual items came from that made up this handbag or watch. And then in the future, as you sell it to other people, they can then take over the passport and then use it in that sort of value chain. And then I'm particularly interested in is when you look downstream, when you've got a digital passport, say, to your watch, then maybe you could go to an event or the company could market to you because you're a customer they've never seen, maybe in the primary market, and maybe they could get a free invite to Climb because they've got a digital passport, or say a luxury brand that's sponsoring you. So there's a lot of opportunities when you start linking real goods to digital goods. There's lots of things you can think about. Is the digital twins? Could an NFT come with a watch?
I guess there's a security element as well. If you've got that, a bit like a car with the, whatever it's called, the piece of paper that you get with your car, you know who's had it previously. So if the watch is stolen, but the passport's not going to come with it, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And it extends into almost all industries because when you start thinking about car parts, do you know it's a real car part? You know, there's a lot of fraudulent activity and fakes.
Yeah.
And now people start getting into different stuff like 3D printing. You know, you might want to make sure you're 3D printing the right part and it'd come with a passport. And I think everything will have lots of passports and they'll become hopefully transparent. You know, you shouldn't have to know about this. It should just bring the trust. And then you should be easily able to prove your ownership of an item and then extract any sort of, not extract, but then gain any value from owning that item. And then if you want to sell it in the future, it should be easy to do. And this exists in the real world with house deeds, but they're all held in, you know, very centralized sources or even physical pieces of paper.
Can we go in a different direction? Because one of the things outside of your job and building a business and selling your business and now working with eBay, one of the things that you've been very strong at is building that community.
Yes.
Talk a bit about that, why did it and what you gained from it.
Well, I think in the Web3 space and blockchain space, they've tested a lot of ideas really early with very passionate communities. So when we built an NFT marketplace, it wasn't really us selling this marketplace proposition. It was getting everyone else who was interested in that particular concept, all the creative artists, all the collectors, and all them became a community. And all that community then started to rally around this particular project. And we started to really see the value of community to a product. If you think about traditional products, they're often very one way in direction. You know, if you own a luxury watch or something, often they just market to you, but they don't really ever ask you or invite you to stuff, or people are feeding back. In Web3, we saw the power of communities and really sort of building the product itself and building side by side from a very early stage. And we were able to put on real life events and bring the community there and listen to them and get that product feedback. They were also to help us with support. They'd also promote the product. They'd be brand advocates. And, you know, Web3 and blockchain became very hot and then it's sort of cool. But of some of the concepts that we used through that period, I really see the power of building products with very strong communities from the start. And because they bring so much value, you know, you're getting a lot of stuff and the people there, they're not there because they want to interact with your product. They're there because they're with people of like-minded interests. Everyone who was in our community was into innovation, crypto art, forward thinking. You know, they just had the same shared beliefs. And it's very easy to build when everyone's pulling in the same direction. And the people have just become aligned with these ideas very easily. And the communities became huge and very powerful. And it wasn't always perfect, because if you then build it within a community, you get all this great feedback to support the product. Everyone's talking, but then you're also getting a lot of pressure, and the communities then can try and lead you in directions that they think you should go. So it's very powerful. And I think traditional products, especially what we've seen through eBay, are trying to build these communities out more, but they're making the same mistakes over and over again, which is trying to build a community to push their marketing messages from, rather than looking at it from the people of why people are in communities. And you often saw that at the start in eBay, because you get passionate sneaker communities. And so really, I think that concept is very powerful of really, the community is really finding the product rather than the product building the community.
Fantastic stuff, Andy. You properly are at the cutting edge. And I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it, Gordon, to have something like this in the north of England?
Absolutely, 100%. It's just great success for me.
And I'm actually from Hull, but I haven't heard that mentioned too much today. So
It is the
hopefully
north of
throw
England. We go right across the M62 corridor and above. It is very much the north. Hull
Thank
definitely
you.
counts as being in the north. Andy, thank you so much. Thank you to all of our guests on this special edition of Conversations at the Summit. Go and listen back to some of the previous episodes. We've had some absolutely fantastic conversations on there. There will be more coming up in the future. We've got a few in the can so that this guy can have a holiday because he needs it. Please tell all your friends about it. Subscribe, like. But for now, from all of us, goodbye.